A dog doesn't need courage to chase off rats.
Alright, welcome back to Honored Madman. We've got a short entry for you guys today, bite-sized if you will. So there are a lot of dogs in Elden Ring, several different kinds to be precise, and there's even more countless different kinds of knights. But there's only one order of dog knights. Similar to the Anubis-esque Dark Knights of Wind Waker are the knights we're going to talk about today, the bloodhound knights. Definitely one of the most unique kind of knight found in the Lands Between, and one of my personal favorites. So first off, they appear to be half human, half beast hybrids. Now I only say that because of how their legs are structured. They have canine hind legs, but their hands, head, and overall their entire upper torso are all very human. We'll touch more on what they might look like under the armor in a little bit. But the Bloodhound Knights are said to be the best trackers in all of the land, and it is said that they choose their masters without the use of any language at all and are loyal to them once chosen for life. Now, the fact that they can't speak is interesting. I wonder if this is by choice or if they are physically incapable of it. That would definitely be dog-like. But the Bloodhound Knights generally served nobles, and from the looks of it, they mostly served the Caria nobles. So it's almost like they were a pet of status, you know? While also doubling as highly capable bodyguards or even assassins. They were extremely deadly fighters capable of using their claws or even their unique curved swords with deadly efficiency. They possess lightning quick reflexes. Their long-bladed claws allow them to scale buildings rather easily. They're able to use ninja-style teleport, dash, and dodge techniques. You'd think they keep an old hunter's bone in their back pocket or something. And sure enough, they seem to be the originators of this technique in the Lands Between, as it's named after them, the Bloodhound Step, something almost every player is familiar with. And as I mentioned, that blade they carry is devastating. It does a bleed buildup, and it has, in my opinion, a really cool little weapon art, at least when you do the strong attack after it. Now, while the sword is awesome, the armor is even cooler. First off, it's got that conical shape to it, which I believe is a real style of medieval helmet. I saw one in House of the Dragon. That has to make it real. And I do suppose it's possible that they wear these specific kinds of helmets so that they have room for their alleged snouts. But what's even more curious is the crest on their cape. It looks like the old school barbed ring design that we see on the capes of the Storm Commanders O'Neill and Niall, but with one notable difference. It appears to either have a wolf or a dog's face right in the middle of it. Perhaps they're meant to be seen as a fusion of Carian and Landell technology. Maybe they were brought into existence during the time where Renala and Radagon were married. Or I suppose the more obvious possibility is that they're just beastmen, or maybe were until they underwent some changes. And if that is the case, it's not too different than the Troll Knights. See, the trolls were lesser giants who betrayed their bigger kin during Marika's war against the giants, but a handful of these guys would later swear allegiance to Renala, and this seemed to be the better choice as most of the trolls who served Marika wound up enslaved, and more often than not were used as beasts of burden. Whereas in Caria, the trolls were knighted, given cool Carian enchanted helmets. They cast aside the tarnished gold swords they had been given by Marika in exchange for fine silver ones bejeweled with glintstones. And most importantly, they were treated as equals in Caria, fighting side by side with their human counterparts. And perhaps the Bloodhound Knights are evidence that something similar happened with a select group of beastmen. And I think that would explain their connection with the Carians, if they do indeed have one. I think they do simply because most Bloodhound Knights found in the game are in service to somebody who has ties to Caria. Or alternatively, there's some sort of Carian experiment on wolves. As we know, the Carian royal family has a love of wolves. They keep dire wolves at their manor. They're also known for breeding rather large red wolves capable of sorcery. So the Bloodhounds could be a Carian attempt to make wolves more humanoid, able to wield weapons as opposed to just conjuring them up, which is something that I think is definitely within the scope of Carian technology. And they bleed red, which means they're organic and not silver based, unlike some of Caria's minions. And just like the Carian trolls, there really aren't a whole lot of Bloodhound Knights in the world. There's only 6 to be exact. So yeah, not a lot, but let's go over each of them individually and speculate as to where their allegiances lie. So the first one that most of us will encounter is probably Bloodhound Knight Darwyl, and he's sort of like the exception to the Bloodhound Knight's famed loyalty, which just goes to show you, even in an order of knights that are known and famed for their loyalty, it doesn't have a 100% success rate. So we've got Darwyl, who is in service to Lady Ranni, but somehow, some way, he would betray her and find himself on the run hiding from Ranni's half-brother Blythe, a half-wolf shadow whose name ironically means wolf. Now, it's tough to say what exactly Darwyll could have done to betray Ranni, but it could be something simple as that he helped Celivis with one of his schemes. Perhaps his behavior is a sign that if they are uplifted beastmen, or whatever you want to call them, that this programming override it hasn't 100% taken. If someone commits something as grievous as what Ranni did against the Greater Will, then perhaps it would be enough to revert the Bloodhound Knights to their original programming, even if the physical changes remain. Or conversely, Darwyll just feared for his life after his master just went against the Greater Will, literal God, and so he hid in an Everjail to avoid its wrath. Either way though, Darwyll was the only Bloodhound Knight to sully his order's reputation by betraying his master, and when you're a knight whose order's whole thing is being extremely loyal like a dog, it's as if, for Darwyll, betrayal is a symbol of his individuality and belief in personal freedom. The next Bloodhound Knight I wanted to talk about resides in the Lakeside Crystal Cave, and he sort of is guarding the path to the Slumbering Wolf Shack, which houses Latenna and her unfortunately deceased wolf Lobo, which, again, ironically means wolf. You know FromSoft with their imaginative names. Anyway though, it's unknown if this Bloodhound Knight is protecting her or if it's serving Gideon and imprisoning her. I tend to lean towards the latter. Shit, this Bloodhound Knight is probably who killed Lobo. And if he does indeed serve Gideon, then I believe he's the only one confirmed to not be serving anybody related to the Carian royal family. And sure, the next couple that I'm going to mention's connections are tenuous at best, but they are still connections. And you know, Gideon's possession of a Bloodhound Knight isn't exactly out of the ordinary. I mean, this guy has all kinds of stuff, artifacts, knowledge, spells that he really shouldn't have. It's kind of his whole thing to be in possession of various impressive and rare assets, which I guess is a testament to how prolific he is at gathering forbidden and secret knowledge.
The last of the secret rites, known only to me.
And like I said, these Bloodhound Knights, they seem to be like a status symbol, and a Tarnished as renowned as Gideon, well, it would make sense for him to have one. I mean, this guy's even mentioned in the opening cutscene.
Gideon Othniel.
And in the same passage as the great Horalu Godfrey, no less. So if he's the only non-Carian affiliated person with a Bloodhound Knight, it wouldn't be the first time a rule was broken specifically for him. This is the type of guy that when you tell him something you thought he didn't know, he responds with various theories on the subject as if he'd been pondering it for years and had already known it. Old Gideon, he's a sucker for control, he's just a little bit more subtle about it than, say, Celivis. This knight probably served as one of Gideon's most accomplished minions, and the Bloodhound Knight's lack of speech made it the perfect henchman for someone like Gideon. He even had his manservant Ensha take a page from the dog's book with the whole strong silent type bit. So yeah, it's not out of the ordinary for one of the most famous Tarnished of all time to be in possession of a cool pet. And I suppose the alternative possibility was that the Bloodhound Knight was supposed to be protection for Latenna, but then why didn't he protect her and Lobo? And who's the owner in that instance? Loretta? No, I believe Gideon sent this Bloodhound Knight to sniff Latenna out and find where she's hiding after she narrowly evaded the slaughter that took place at the Albinoric village at the hands of Gideon the All-Knowing. It's possible that this Bloodhound Knight could be responsible for what happened to that female Albinoric that's found deceased in the Temple Quarter. Perhaps she was an accomplice of Latenna's, but I think it's more than likely that she was just an unwitting bystander who ended up a senseless casualty of the hunt that Gideon had put his dog on. And that's the thing with these knights, they are literal bloodhounds. Of course Gideon is going to use them to the full extent of their abilities. If that poor Albinoric girl really was Latenna's accomplice, then that's probably how the Bloodhound Knight got her scent. Now the next few I'm going to mention are considered lesser Bloodhound Knights, but that's only because they don't have a boss health bar. The first of which is found near the gates to the Raylucarian School for Witchcraft and Body Snatchery, just past the Isolated Merchant and past all of those wolves. He's hanging off the wall waiting to ambush any who pass through that gate, although little does he know anybody who does go through that gate teleports all the way to the other side of the academy. They might be great and agile warriors and even better trackles, but they are a bit dumb. Now this one could just be here to ambush returning scholars, or really any who are trying to regain entry to the academy. Now who it belongs to is a bigger question, and I suppose it could belong to somebody at the academy, or it's perhaps a remnant of the Carian's war with the Academy, in which he might be there to murder sorcerers on behalf of his Carian masters. Now there's one that lives in the basement of Volcano Manor, and he seems to be docile until you approach him, and I think it's likely that he either belonged to Rykard or currently belongs to Tanith. And I think it's possible that Rykard might have just given the knight to Tanith as a gift. He seemed to care about her quite a bit, as he offered her that tonic of forgetfulness so that she wouldn't remember all the war crimes he committed, and she appears to have been his heir apparent as well as his consort, so I mean, why not? The fact that he's just chilling in the basement leads me to believe that he has to belong to somebody who resides at the manor, and I suppose it could be Rykard, and since Rykard currently is indisposed, that would explain why his dog is just chilling in the basement. And since they only pick one master to serve for life, that would explain why no one can get him to do anything else, because Rykard's not around to tell him to do anything else. And that's definitely a possibility. But I like the idea that the Bloodhound Knight was a gift to Tanith from Rykard. Gifts such as Bloodhound Knights weren't exactly unheard of in Gelmir. We know that at least one of Rykard's Gelmir Knights was in possession of a Bloodhound. And when that exceptional Gelmir Knight was laid to rest in the Gelmir hero grave, his loyal Bloodhound Knight went with him to stand vigil over his master's remains for all eternity. A more loyal companion you probably couldn't find. And I suppose that Bloodhound is an example of the extent of their loyalty, whereas Darwul was an example of the exception. But that's one of my favorite little subtle things in the game, is that Bloodhound Knight mourning the fallen Gelmir Knight. Just a great piece of visual storytelling and world building. 10 out of 10. And now, last but not least, my personal favorite Bloodhound Knight, the Knight of the Swamp Lookout Tower in Caelid. And I think out of the lesser ones, this one has the most possible theories beyond who he is, who he served, and what he's doing. So he's found minding his own business in the Swamp Lookout Tower just outside of Celia, the town of sorcery. His master is, or rather was, presumably the hooded corpse in the cell he seems to be guarding. A smoldering noble from the looks of it. Probably a relative to a Redmane Knight. Looks like they were possibly even a student at the Celia town of sorcery. Curiously enough, this corpse happens to have some briars wrapped around his neck. In the lands between, this essentially means he was a criminal. For example, the briars are most commonly seen on the former criminal manservants that served the fire monks. These individuals have had their eyes gouged out to experience eternal darkness, which is where they discovered the blood star that allows them to do their little cool thorn magic. So in a sense, this power they possessed was found in the depths of their hopelessness. This individual in the cell, however, wasn't so lucky. He did not discover the blood star and gain cool blood-bending abilities, but he did experience enough despair to produce a long-lost Celian sorcery known as Eternal Darkness. I'm assuming he also had his eyes gouged out, but I wonder why he didn't see the blood star. Perhaps this individual was falsely imprisoned and the servants of the fire monks are all unrepentant criminals. Which sort of makes it an even bigger mystery as to why this poor bastard was imprisoned in the first place. Did he betray Celia? Was he just some asshole that his classmates turned on and did this to as a sort of prank? To me, neither of those seem likely since he had such an incredible pet to protect him. If it is indeed his pet. It seems like it is, but I guess the alternative is that it's guarding him, making sure that he, stays dead and stays imprisoned. It's sort of up in the air, I guess, but I tend to think that the Bloodhound Knight belonged to this dead individual in the cell. And I also think that regardless of the specifics or the intricacies of it, this guy was probably imprisoned by Celians for the sole purpose of making him experience that eternal darkness. And I'm not saying he was imprisoned by the Celians as a whole, but maybe by a select group of scholars. As on the way to this tower, just past Celia's lone troll defender, is a gatehouse. A haunted one to be exact, with 3 Celian scholar ghosts guarding it, and this little ambush is situated right on the road path to the tower, so it seems the sorcerers want this tower left alone. But why? Well, Celia was essentially the cool kids' magic school that wasn't beholden to the strict rules that Radagon and Renala had set up for the Rey Lucaria Academy, not by a long shot. So I really think the possibility that his colleagues, maybe even his friends, imprisoned him just to recreate the Eternal Darkness spell is a highly probable possibility. They even threw the briars to add in another layer of despair to guarantee the spell's creation. Celia truly was a place of few, if any, restrictions and regulations, and for the most part they ignored the rules of their Western contemporaries, as I mentioned earlier. They did imprison that Lucarian battle mage in the Evergel, though. But I always kind of figured that they took him for an academy spy after having spent too much time away from Celia at Rey Lucaria. Anyways, who knows why this unfortunate noble bastard wound up rotting in a cell in a watchtower in Caelid, but the sorcery he quote-unquote was carrying is considered lost by the Celians, and I don't think he stole it. It seems more likely that the despair experienced by this noble for being imprisoned during a Red Flora nuclear explosion was enough to recreate the rare sorcery. Again, they also gouged his eyes out and hung briars around his neck. It seems really likely that that's the purpose for his imprisonment, to just simply bring back an old spell. Either way though, since the Bloodhound Knights choose their owner for life, this particular one was now without purpose, and seems to have resigned himself to guarding these remains, resting from time to time in the ruined tower beside the cell that would become his master's tomb, and presumably subsisting on the abundance of goats that grazes near the ruin. This story is actually surprisingly similar to the one at Gelmir Hero's grave, where the Bloodhound Knight is sort of standing vigil over his master's remains, although this one's a lot less grand and a lot more tragic if the theory is true. And the alternative is simply that the Bloodhound Knight was ordered to guard the individual cell and ensure that they never escape, which also would guarantee the creation of that lost Celian sorcery. In that scenario though, it's a lot less clear who the dog belongs to, so I think it's a lot less fun. Plus I like my first theory better. It just seems just more well thought out, because it was. I do think it makes the most sense that this Bloodhound Knight, whoever he belonged to, had to have been a sorcerer relative of a Redmane Knight at the very least. Perhaps the noble was even related to one of the Redmane Knights that studied at Caelid, and that's how he got in. So yeah, the connections between the Carians and the Bloodhound Knights aren't as cut and dry as I'd like to think, but if nothing else, there is some small connection there. Now originally I just thought they were beastmen encased in armor. I mean, they both used curved kind of swords, they fought in a similar way. Then I thought beastmen human hybrids, but that seems to be more in the demi-humans ballpark. But while I can't ascertain what they were under the armor or what their genetic structure is, I can definitively say what their role in the society was, and that is that they were the high status pets of nobility and sorcerers. And it wasn't just for show. They were highly valued by their masters for their use as bodyguards and as their own personal assassins. They were basically everything a scheming noble could want all wrapped into one. Deadly, fiercely loyal, could protect them from danger, and had an inability to talk back, or at all. And of course they are very reminiscent of Dark Souls 3's Outrider Knights. They were the Knights of Pontiff Sullivan, who essentially were given these rings that would over time turn them more and more bestial until it culminated in them turning into a Pontiff beast. They definitely have a similar fighting style to the Bloodhound Knights and kind of serve a similar purpose, but at least from what I can tell, Bloodhound Knights aren't tortured nobles, and that's what the Outrider Knights were. Anyway though, this has already gone on a bit longer than I wanted to because I didn't have like a whole definitive narrative that I wanted to play out in this video. But as always, I hope you guys found this to be at least somewhat informative or amusing. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the Bloodhound Knights and their mysterious origins and, you know, just what they are. But as always, if you liked the video, please like it. If you disliked it, please dislike it. And if you like hearing me ramble on and on and on, then please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel out, and plus we're about to hit 25k. That's 1/4 of the way towards 100k. Now I think we can do it. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get the outro out of the way, and then a couple final thoughts on what's coming out next. So the day is fast approaching with that Aldia video, and I know I've been talking about it for probably months at this point, but it's really just been this whole labor of love because he's one of my favorite characters, and I really hope, well, that it'll be up for you guys to see soon. That's what I'm mainly hoping on, that I get it done fast and soon. And in the video I posted 2 days ago, I mentioned a bunch of planned projects. Those are all still coming down the pike, but I've been replaying the Fallout games, and I've been wondering which game resonates the most with you guys. Now, I've been starting from 1 and 2. I've only played these games one time each, so it's been a real fun experience relearning everything and experiencing all this new shit. But I was thinking of doing a few lore videos for the older Fallout games because there's not really a whole lot of coverage on them. I mean, people make videos to death about Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3, and Fallout 4 and their lore, or how those games are made, or whether they like them or don't like them. But I never really see much love directed at the first 2 games in the series, which really are some underrated, fun-ass games. It's basically like a post-apocalyptic Oregon Trail that's way more immersive. But look at me going off on a tangent at the end of the video. As always, though, I hope you guys be safe, and I will see you guys very, very shortly, either with the Demi-Humans video or a random Fallout upload. Who knows? It might even be the Aldia one. Anyway, until next time.
I said, why y'all's whooping on me?
Because you're an animal, dog. All you understand is the fist and boot.